Hey everybody, it's Dwayne, developer evangelist at GitKraken. I'm here with one of our GitKraken ambassadors, Kevin Bost. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Kevin?
Sure. Thanks, Dwayne. My name is Kevin Bost. I am a senior software architect with a professional services company called IntelliTect. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and then more importantly, a GitKraken ambassador. One of the best parts about being a consultant or a professional services company is I get to work on a lot of different projects. Our company does a lot of work with companies in the energy space, so a lot of power companies, that kind of thing. We've also done a bunch with financial and healthcare type industry verticals. So we primarily are a Microsoft-based shop. So I do a lot of C#, do a lot of Azure, do a lot of ASP.NET Core, MVC. In my spare time, I really enjoy desktop development with like WPF, do a lot of stuff out on GitHub, and obviously GitKraken plays a big role in that.
Do you remember your first experience with version control and/or Git?
14 or 15 years ago, graduating from university, got my very first job. And at the time, the company was using Subversion, SVN, for their version control, which was fine. That was kind of my first introduction to trying to understand the versioning of code and how to deal with conflicts and merging. And thankfully, I had a great team. There was only 2 or 3 of us at any given point in time, so not a ton of stepping on each other's toes. The next company I worked for, they were actually using Git on GitHub. And one of the best things that they did within the first week of everybody starting, there was a bunch of Git tutorials and kind of practicing stuff that they had everyone work through. They had a fairly, I'll say, a slightly more complex Git workflow than a lot of people because they had some shared code between a bunch of teams with sub modules and back and forth. So it was pretty easy to get stuff messed up between all the teams, especially since they were doing some multi-targeting stuff for a whole bunch of different platforms before that was really a thing. So it made for a lot of fun Git interactions, but that training really kind of helped cement the idea of a lot of those basic Git concepts. At the time, there wasn't a lot of great tooling out there. I remember somewhat painfully loving Tortoise Git because I had come from Tortoise SVN. So that was kind of my first introduction, and working with, the Explorer, the folder view, that always felt kind of nice a little bit. But this kind of that same problem of not really being able to visualize what was happening with Git is oftentimes what I still see with people today is the hardest part in learning that kind of source control is being able to really visualize, hey, I did an action. What did that actually do? And kind of figure out what that relationship is between all of the commits.
What are you excited about right now in the tech world? What's in the programming dev space is getting you excited every day?
Just a lot of fun Microsoft stuff coming down the pipe. MAUI, multiple application user interface. Don't quote me on that. Something like that. Basically being able to write your code and deploy it out, targeting a bunch of different platforms, primarily mobile with like iOS and Android, but they've got a lot of different stuff being built out. I do really enjoy doing a lot of the streaming stuff and learning. That really, I started doing it. People initially thought, oh, that's a cool way for doing some learning stuff, but a lot of times I do it for me because I find it to be really fun. I really enjoy teaching. It's something that actually surprised me a little bit. At one point in time, I had actually emailed a prior professor of mine and said, hey, I really appreciate everything I learned from you. He was a great instructor because he came from industry and came back. And I was like, I think I'd love to do it. And his exact answer was don't. But conveniently with my job, we've landed a couple opportunities to actually go back and teach the university classes and that kind of thing. And my streaming has kind of become another way for me to be able to kind of scratch that itch a little bit of being able to share what I know or what I'm learning and see if other people find some inspiration. And I really do enjoy even my stream the other night. I had some people going, hey, do you mind if we ask you this question? It's a little off topic. I'm like, shoot, I love rabbit trails. Let's do this. So it's always fun when people come on and interact and start walking down things.
You mentioned in there you're working on open source projects. What open source projects you're working on, or which ones do you just wish people knew more about?
Yeah, so a couple of them I will plug really quick. I mentioned the material design and XAML project. So that is a library that aims to take Google's material design. For people who may not be familiar with that term, think the Android UI, the look and feel that you get there, or in Gmail or that kind of thing. bring that UI framework down to Windows desktop development, specifically WPF. At some point in time, I'm hoping that maybe that migrates into a version of the library for WinUI 3. We'll see what happens. Still trying to hash out how feasible that's going to be, but it is one of those, I'll say, a passion project, just because I love XAML and WPF so much. It's been a fun one to work on. Another one that I wish people kind of knew more about, I guess, is the System.CommandLine project. This is something that my company got involved with fairly early on as a collaboration with Microsoft. It's a library that aims to make building command line interactions inside of the .NET space much easier. So that it oftentimes sounds easy to build a command line application. How hard could it be to parse some command line args? Turns out doing it well is really actually quite hard. But even just beyond the simple, hey, I want to parse the command line arguments that were passed to me, there's a whole lot more that it adds to the tool chain, including invocation. You can think of kind of like routing from your favorite web framework. If you've got a bunch of commands, figuring out, okay, the user typed this on the command line. What method do I invoke? What are the parameters I pass to it? Doing all of that mapping in there as well. It'll add things like tab completion, suggestion correction for if you typo something in there. It's also trimmable, latest C# language features. So if you want to build like a standalone exe and have it stripped down, it can handle all of that as well. And it's had a lot of performance work into it to make it really fast as well. So it's been a really fun project to get involved in and work on. It's currently in beta. It is getting close to GA. Unfortunately, the quality bar with Microsoft is very high. So it's been going through just this last week some API reviews just to try to hash things out, and it's getting closer.
You are a GitKraken ambassador. Thank you very much for helping spread the word out there in the world. As an ambassador, as somebody that uses GitKraken tools day in and day out, what advice do you have for folks out there? What wisdom can you share with the community?
Yeah, I think the one thing I usually tell all of my students, especially when we're teaching at the university, one of the things we really push to the students is learning Git, and oftentimes I'm teaching it with GitKraken, is make sure that you learn Git well. So in terms of GitKraken, being able to manipulate the history graph and move pointers around is usually one of those tricks and techniques that oftentimes I see people miss a lot. I know there's always the hotly debated, do you rebase, do you merge, what do you do there? Making sure that you actually know those concepts. So one of the ones that I actually just went over with some colleagues yesterday was the idea before, especially if I'm on a feature branch, before I rebase, one of the easiest things to do, squash all my commits and then rebase. Just in terms of Git workflow, when you rebase, it replays those commits one at a time. And so oftentimes if there's conflicts, you have to not only resolve the conflicts, but resolve them at the point of that prior commit. And at least mentally, there's a big hurdle there. So oftentimes one of the things that I'll teach people to do is, hey, especially if you're on a feature branch, squash those commits, then rebase, makes your life so much simpler to go through and do it. And obviously, I love the flow in GitKraken of being able to do that. Either the right-click menu, just targeting what branch you want to do, or even the drag drop right from the commit history graph. Both of them work great.
Thanks very much for the time today. Any final shout outs you want to give? Any plugs you want to give us on your way out?
I guess I'll just say, if anybody's interested in following me or catching up on various socials, https://keboo.dev. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube. You'll find a whole swath of videos. I do a lot of C# related content most of the time, with a lot of stuff with WPF, with a project that I have been maintaining for 3 or 4 years now called Material Design in XAML. So a lot of content around that, especially if people are looking to get started and are looking for entry-level learning material as well.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for the wisdom. Make sure you follow Kevin out there. And if you want to also be a GitKraken ambassador, let us know. You go to gitkraken.com/ambassador and find out more. So thank you very much.
Thank you.